You're listening to the 20% Podcast, powered by the 20% Collective, a community of trailblazing women financial advisors redefining what it means to build a firm on your terms. No fluff, no ego. Just bold conversations, fresh perspectives, and real-world strategies to help you lead, grow, and own your success. This is the 20% Podcast.
Hi, I'm Cathy Curtis, founder of Curtis Financial Planning and co-founder of the 20% Collective. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce our very first guest on the podcast, Melissa Joy. Melissa is one of those rare leaders who makes you feel braver just by hearing her story. She's a certified financial planner and certified divorce financial analyst who spent 2 decades running investment and planning departments before launching Pearl Planning in 2018, her modern client-first firm based in Dexter, Michigan, and serving families coast to coast. The name Pearl is personal, her grandmother's and daughter's middle name, and it carries the firm's ethos, no grit, no pearl. It's the reminder on Melissa's desk too. You can do anything, but you can't do everything. In our conversation, Melissa shares the moment she chose independence and how that low point became a launch pad. Fast forward to today, and Pearl Planning is an SEC-registered RIA with a growing team of CFP pros, an intern pipeline from Michigan State's PFP program, and a clear operating rhythm powered by EOS, complete with a true integrator to match Melissa's visionary role. If you're scaling, you'll appreciate her playbook, a streamlined planning experience, smart workflow design, disciplined rebalancing, and a marketing engine built on consistent LinkedIn presence and a monthly newsletter. You'll also hear Melissa's investment philosophy, simple on purpose, cost-aware, tax-aware, and index-forward. We dig into hiring, leadership, and boundaries, and we go there on industry change, why women's voices shouldn't be relegated to for women only. And we discuss how Melissa's next chapter, the messy money middle focus for Gen X and elder millennial double breadwinner families, creates room for both partners at the table. If you're building a firm on your terms, this episode is a masterclass in turning grit into something beautiful. Let's dive in. Melissa Joy, welcome to the 20% Podcast. I'm glad you're here to share your story and your wisdom with our listeners.
Hi, Cathy. Thanks for having me.
You're so welcome. You know, I'm always curious about how advisors come up with their firm names. And your name and tagline are so great. Pearl Planning, no grit, no pearl. And can you share a little bit about the story behind the name and why you felt that was right for your firm?
Yeah, I love the story of our firm name. I've got a great last name, so it would have been tempting to be Joy Financial Planning. I can say it's a great last name because I picked it up by marriage, but Pearl is both the middle name of my grandmother and the middle name of my daughter. And a pearl is also an irritation that turns into something beautiful. And when I was starting my firm, I'd actually hit a crossroads in my career where things didn't work out at a firm that I thought I was going to work at forever. I'd kind of climbed the mountain. I was a partner. And then, myself and the other partners didn't see eye to eye, and I was the odd woman out. And so I was definitely in a low place. I was in a place where, with the benefit of hindsight, the world was my oyster, but it didn't feel like that at the time. And so that was the birthplace of Pearl Planning. I found the name very quickly. It still took several months to start the firm. And then I was just thinking about this. I have a friend of my husband's and a friend of mine who was at a shop in Detroit and saw a No Grit, No Pearl poster and sent it to me right after I'd started the firm. And I was like, oh my gosh, this just says it. This is my state of mind. And you would not believe how many people, before I ever meet them, feel like they know me and the firm and identify with us because of that name, that tagline.
No, it's really perfect. And you could do so much with it from a marketing perspective too.
Oh yeah. It's like, it works. So I love the name.
Well, I'm envious because I started out with Curtis Financial Planning and I never changed it.
I think that's perfect.
some of your comments just now lead into my next question, and that is, what is the tipping point that led you to go independent in 2018? And it sounds like there was stuff going on and you needed some grit for sure.
Yeah, I, never thought I would be in that moment where I wasn't in an ensemble practice as a partner. But then, kind of things pivot, things change, the unexpected happens. And I remember working with a business coach, actually trying to kind of work myself into being what everybody else needed me to be at the time. And she kind of was like, well, what's the worst thing that happens if this goes sideways and, you're on the outside looking in? And, I was like, I think I'd be okay. And so I really thought about working for other people, but I felt like I'd kind of just gotten divorced. And so I wasn't ready to get married yet. And I also knew it was likely I could fall back and get a job, but I wanted to take the plunge, even though really that wasn't something I yearned to do. I never thought I'd have the chance. I was always like, oh, it would have been cool if I started something, but it's just never going to be for me. But it's been such a fun journey, 7 years. As we're recording it, this is the anniversary month.
That is amazing. And you've hit a milestone recently, August 1. You're now your own RIA, SEC registered, and that's just another great part of your journey. What led you to make that change? What happened?
Well, we've been in a couple different entities. It was really beneficial for me because I sat in the independent broker-dealer world when I first left, and I was fortunate to work with a handful of clients I'd worked with in the past. And so staying in the IBD world in the first move 7 years ago worked great. And then I was with a really great friend of mine, Sherry Stevens, who is the president of Stevens Wealth Management. Together, we were a satellite of her branch in the IBD world. And then together went and became an RIA about 3.5 years ago. And at that time, we were just crossing the $100 million threshold. And so it didn't feel like a sure shot that we'd be over the amount we needed to be and remain SEC registered. And so we decided to stay together. But when we crossed the threshold of about $250 million in assets, and I really struggled to see the future beyond 3 or 4 years, about a year ago, I started to kind of explore possibilities of what do I want this company to be 10 years from now? We weren't a tiny, tiny guppy in the fish pond. Maybe now we're a medium-sized fish. And so we felt a little bit more like we had our sea legs to be fully independent. And I think it was important to have that autonomy to be able to control technology in an ever-changing world, compliance in an ever-changing world. And it just felt like the right time once I made that decision to go independent, which we just completed just a couple weeks ago. I felt like kind of the sky's clear where I could see the vision again for longer term, 5 or 10 years away, which is really encouraging in terms of, having a pathway to build toward.
That's great. You talked about your background with Sherry, et cetera, but prior to that, you had a long career in investment, financial planning, operations, and I'm thinking that probably all that experience has really helped you set up Pearl Planning for success. Would you agree with that? And what did you take from that background?
Yeah, I kind of started the opposite of where a lot of people who get into our business knowing what they want to do start. But a lot of women actually have started with this career path. I became an assistant in a very small firm and then was an assistant in a bigger firm where there were additional needs for the firm that resulted in, kind of, hey, Melissa, can you do this? Let's do some research on that, things like that. And so we ended up, I took roles that went from kind of supporting an advisor to then really focusing on investment research for a good 10 to 15 years, and eventually built out an investment department and a hybrid RIA, and spent a lot of time working on the operations of a firm versus being client facing. So I'd come into meetings to talk about their investments, but I didn't, find clients. I didn't do the financial planning for a long time. So it's really been over the last 15 years that I've added financial planning to my area of focus. And it wasn't until the last 7 or 8 years that I was focused on business development and kind of finding new clients. So it was a really great progression because I got to learn so much about the business of running a wealth management firm, hands-on. And so that really feels good.
Yeah, I think about the women I know in this industry, and everyone starts from a different place. And it's interesting how many skill sets can still lead to success. Like you had the operational and investment background, but maybe not the financial planning, where someone else has really good financial planning skills and then has to move into the investment. But it's all possible.
Totally. And I think getting the CFP, I thought I knew a lot about financial planning, but something magically happens when you work on that education. And I came to the financial planning side of things late, but in many ways, I feel like it gave me an advantage because I wasn't kind of relying on kind of old tools, because I feel like the level of service and the things you can work on with clients has evolved so much over the last 25 or 30 years. So having the opportunity to kind of look at it fresh from a more recent standpoint, I actually think could be an advantage.
So currently you are a full service comprehensive planning investment management firm offering similar service to all your clientele. What strategies, systems, software have been instrumental in scaling to support all those services?
Yeah, I think the choice to use Right Capital from the beginning of our firm's history was really critical. It's a piece of software for financial planning that is easy to onboard for multiple clients. So that was a really important consideration. We hit some crossroads where it was difficult when we were using our CRM hub or Redtail. And so we added a workflow overlay called Hubly, although we're transitioning to one system called AdviseOn for both CRM as well as performance reporting and document management right now. But also just not waiting to kind of implement marketing strategies and integrating a repeatable process in terms of how we onboard and work with people were critical components to our success.
And was that your experience in your prior jobs where you worked on workflows, onboarding? So you had that knowledge and background.
Yeah, I didn't onboard exactly the same way as I had in the past. I feel like, especially just like building a website that says this is exactly what our process is. We have an introductory meeting. We have a initial financial planning, data gathering meeting. We present a financial plan and we have follow-up meetings. That hadn't been like, I didn't take that completely from my former life and kind of translate it. In that world, there had been, kind of paraplanners and a diamond team where it was like a lot of hands touching things and a little bit different process, but tailoring a process that I felt like could be repeatable was really important, knowing that I needed to focus on organic growth. Just, we hadn't already built the firm. We needed to build the firm, or I needed to build the firm at the beginning. So that became, kind of an area of focus.
Great. Going back to technology. Okay, so you have told us a couple of the technologies you love. Everyone want to know what's the rest of your tech stack. So can you line it up for us?
I think so. So we use Jump for meeting note taking, an AI note taker. We use Y charts for investment research, and it also helps me to create graphs for webinars and marketing projects. We still use Tamarack Rebalancer, even though we use performance reporting out of AdviseOn. And then we are also a team that works on the entrepreneur operating system. And so we use Strategy to keep track of our project management and accountability for EOS.
But your top recommendation, it sounds like, is Right Capital.
I love Right Capital. It's been really good for me.
Great, thank you. So you've talked about your firm and team. So we're going to move on to some questions about your team and leadership. Can you describe what your firm looks like right now?
Yes. So we have 7 team members. 3 of those team members are financial planners. We're all CFPs, and 2 of us work as a team with about $200 million in assets, a little bit higher than that. And then one of us is an additional advisor who brought our own assets to the firm about 3 years ago. And she works with her group of clients, which is north of 50 million in assets. And then we have 2 team members that work on account management, NIGOs, opening accounts, scheduling, client service operations. And then we have an integrator that's EOS language, who kind of runs the business, and also a process and systems manager.
So you have quite the team.
Yes, and we had 2 interns this summer from a wonderful personal financial planning program at Michigan State University, and they are actually staying on with us this fall. So they worked full-time over the summer and will be giving us 10 to 15 hours a week each during the fall. So that was a tremendous win in terms of what they brought to the table this summer, and will continue to help us and assist.
That is great. Shout out to Michigan. I also am hiring someone from that program.
Oh, good. I mean, they are rock stars. For those of you listening who have a kid that you might want to get into personal financial planning, it's a minor in the business school at Michigan State, but tremendous education, and the kids graduate with all of the degree or all of the requirements for the CFP exam.
And what a great way for us to help bring more people into the industry. And I have to say, especially young women, because we need them.
So true. So I've even had some women that work or are in the program reach out and, kind of ask career advice and things like that. So I know, both us female advisors as well as the women who are in education programs are looking to kind of recruit and open the doors so more of us kind of join in, so we're not so lonely in these rooms.
Okay, so about recruiting. So personally, I have found hiring and managing people to be extremely challenging. In fact, so challenging that I outsource most of my help, okay? We're very different that way. So tell us some of the challenges. Let's have our listeners learn. Are there any real bits of wisdom you could give about making hiring decisions?
I mean, I think any person who manages people says hiring is hard. You have to be, how important a job is to a person who's working there, and you have to wear so many different hats as an employer. So, there's been a lot of highs and lows when it comes to having a team. Our team has been different sizes over the years. We've always had employees, though. Since we started the company. So I had, worked in an environment and ensemble firm, and it just felt foreign to me to not, kind of build toward having multiple employees. We've had hits and misses over time. Everybody, I would say, has been great working at the company, but we're very entrepreneurial, focused on, kind of thinking about the business as a entrepreneur, even if you're not the business owner yourself. So sometimes not everybody has that kind of perspective or mentality. So that's one of the challenges, but it's been so helpful to find great people and have them grow in roles within the firm. I've really enjoyed that over the years.
Do you have a set process for hiring? For example, do you have them take tests, or do you hire someone to help you find candidates? Or
yeah, so we haven't actually hired anyone with a candidate search firm, but we got close to doing that this year and then kind of stepped back from the intention of that new role. But we do both background checks as an RA. We need to make sure we're, cover our bases in terms of risks, as well as we've used both the caliper test and PXT test for, kind of job skill fit So that's been helpful as well.
And you're implementing a system called EOS right now to help you with that, correct? Tell us about that.
That's been a game changer. So if you've read any books by Gino Wickman, who kind of created the EOS movement, it's, there's a lot. He didn't write anything that didn't exist elsewhere, but he brought and kind of organized tools for small businesses. I'd say going up to about 100 employees, where it helps to, kind of run meetings, create quarterly big picture rocks that you want to complete, have a vision for where you want to be over a year, 3 years, 5 years. It assigns me, for example, the role of a visionary who's like kind of thinking about big picture and says, hey, if a visionary doesn't have someone called an integrator, then you're probably going to be not firing on all cylinders. So we identified a team member who is our integrator. But before that, when we were going through our RIA transition and we hadn't really identified that team member, actually hired a fractional integrator this year. And then we also, when I really wanted to get serious about this, because I'd kind of flirted with using EOS in the past, but didn't have the full accountability that I needed to get it done, we started to use a service through a consultant to help us get on the right page. So that's an EOS implementer. And we meet with her in the beginning for 2 full days and then quarterly, in order to stay on track. And that has been we've just accomplished so much by using that kind of system.
Is it expensive?
It can be like first of all, you could buy the books and try to implement it yourself. But all of the implementers have their own rates that they typically charge per day. They don't typically, lock you into a contract. You can terminate it at any time. There may be travel time if you don't work with someone who's local. We chose a local person for our implementer. But there's a scale in terms of experience and clientele in terms of what you might pay. My own investment for the implementer has been probably between 10 and 20,000 a year. I'd have to look back. But I would say the impact on the practice and also on, kind of peace of mind has been extraordinary, like well above that cost. Just because as things started to get more complex, it felt more challenging to kind of get done just relying on, kind of my own or my team's sweat equity. So this really helped us to get organized, stay ambitious, get on the same page. Not every meeting is the easiest. There's a lot of challenges, but being authentic, aware of our values, kind of staying on the same page and going in the same direction is totally worth it.
Would you have started this earlier, or were you not ready for it?
I probably, with the benefit of hindsight, I would consider starting it earlier. I made some, I once had multiple locations and additional kind of streams of income and teams that were a little less aligned with us. And I think that the implementer might have, really gotten to the meat and bones of like, does this really need to be this way? Earlier. I am so glad we had so much that has been on our plate this past year. And what I hear from people all the time is like either one of two things. A, we're too small to hire someone like that. Or B, maybe we've got so much going on, we should wait. And that's what I did for quite a while, at least a year, where I was like, oh, I'm just not ready to, like, that feels like a lot. I'm just not ready. And I so wish, I'll just say, I'm so glad I didn't delay it any further. I'm not somebody who goes back and says, oh, if only I'd done it earlier, but I'm so grateful that with everything we've taken on this year, that I put that first by making the commitment to use the system and have accountability of a consultant to help teach us and teach my team. Because, you can't just be like, hey, read this book, we're going to do this. So it's been just so important to us.
Are there any other coaching programs, mastermind groups, or anything that you rely on for accountability? It sounds like EOS is really comprehensive, but before that, were you relying on anything else? Do you continue to?
EOS has been my big deal. In the past, I did Limitless, which I think each of us did at different times. So I was in Limitless and also kind of the higher level Limitless leaders until 2 years ago. And that was very helpful to me as well. That program with Stephanie Bogan. I have always had so many friends in our business, whether it's formal or informal study groups. I still meet with a group that I met through Limitless, and I always, kind of talk to people that are in our business. So I'm constantly, kind of bouncing ideas off of people.
I want to move on to investments because you're one of the advisors that I know does investments in-house, and investing is one of your key backgrounds. I don't have any data to back this statement up, but I know anecdotally that a lot of women advisors don't really love the investment portion and really like to do the financial planning. I hope I'm not making too general of a statement there, but you, I know, love investments. And so could you describe, first of all, what is your investment philosophy for your clients?
Yes, I feel like that might be putting me on the spot, but so we're kind of old school asset allocation. I know, I noticed recently a lot of people have kind of flipped to big companies and then sector rotation, but we still do big companies in the U.S., small and mid cap companies in the U.S., international companies, including an emerging markets position. Alternative investments, and then bonds, including short-term kind of core, and then alternatives that have more lower volatility characteristics in return. So it's not that sexy. And the thing that over the years, I used to be, rewind 20 years ago, and I was a researcher for a firm that truly believed in active management, and it was like, I would go to the Morningstar conferences. We might have been there at the same time, although, Cathy, I think you would be on the dais, speaking, and I just, be in the audience, who's that cool woman? We hadn't met each other yet. And, it was constantly searching for managers, especially having been an investor in the lost decade. It was like, okay, who is going to save our bacon when everything falls apart? We've got to find people that take on less risk in the market, and process, people. But gosh, having been that person who was doing the investment research with full discipline, we had a full investment database we built ourselves and did research reports and kept track of hires and fires. And in the beginning, it was kind of a bullpen of investments, and then we kind of converted to discretionary management. I just observed, I read Charlie Ellis's Winning the Loser's Game, and I just observed over time, why aren't we doing at least some indexing? We really lost a lot of political capital kind of asking for that. And so a lot of, I'd say 80% at least of our equity positions are ETFs and either cap weighted or factor weighted strategies nowadays. I just really decided to keep it super simple when I built the remnants of a similar investment process, but added that the manager selection is not going to default to the assumption that active managers are better than passive indexes. So we really focused on lowering costs over the last 7 years, moving from portfolios that probably cost more than 50 basis points to portfolios that were more in the 20 to 30 basis point kind of cost range. Be very intentional about paying for more expensive strategies only when there's a justifiable reason. Fewer positions, not kind of hedging your bets with 6 positions per allocation group and things like that.
Do you use model portfolios?
Yeah, another change was we'd always had, hey, you can have, on the 10. So 100% stock, 90, 80, 70, 60, all on down. And I felt like that was just too many choices. It was really easy to be like, oh, I'm going to hedge. What about another 5%? Like, can I make it 85-15? And it's like, it's just like the cereal aisle. There's just too many choices. So I really whacked down the number of models that we had when I started the company to be 100% stock, 80-20, 65-35, 50-50. And, probably 80% of assets are either 65-35, which I see as like kind of the new 60-40, and then or 80-20 is probably the majority because we typically work with younger clients. I'd also been at a company that really when it came to your financial planning software, you just like whacked down return assumptions. And then also when it came to how you invested, you like beefed up on cash and every time you could choose, you chose a strategy that had less vol than kind of the index. And I felt like that was costing clients over time as well. So we're not trying to take undue risk, but we do other financial planning things to account for, like emergency reserves, et cetera. So we try to be as pure as we can with the way we invest for clients. And then clients can come in and say, will household accounts, so if you had 3 accounts, they all have the same goal, like retirement, his IRA, her IRA, and a joint trust account. We choose to look at all 3 together in our models. So they're householded and we can put tax aware strategies in the taxable account. I'm, really, I love investing, but the thing that really fires me up nowadays is like finding tax aware investment strategies, because I think if you're looking at a way to prove that you can add value, what I've just described, that we're not going to be trying to pick the investment strategy that does better than the index, then being tax aware to me is so much better than so many other firms and strategies. And it's just very difficult to understand and implement if you're a DIY. So that's really where I like to focus nowadays.
I was going to mention tax aware planning because you didn't mention it yet. And I know you do a lot of that. So what you're describing is interesting, that journey from active management. And I think a lot of advisors follow this. Older advisors start even with insurance products, right? And then they move to mutual funds, and then they move to ETFs. I started in the mutual fund active management world too. I have since completely switched to, which a lot of people have, I know, to ETFs because of the low cost structure.
And great structure for tax purposes and reasons, not just cost, but also tax structure.
Yeah. And I have to admit, I'm firmly in the simple is better, non-sexy is better. So we think a lot alike about that. As far as alternatives go, do you investigate your own alternative investments? And because I find that area very challenging.
Okay. So alts. For the first 6 years of our firm, we really I had a very low allocation to super whippy alts. In fact, alts I knew were correlated to the market. So I used like a hedge equity ETF, even though I have some issues with are those really alts? And, it's like the hot dot of the day, but it was like, just don't get ourselves in trouble. It felt really good to be long. And by the way, we're not timing the market. We're not adding, huge swatches of cash or swing stocks and bonds. Like a swing is either 2% more stocks or 2% more bonds. And so I really just said, I don't have time to work on alts, and I didn't focus on it. Over the last year, I feel like both probably because of the composition of my clients and, the state of the world, that having something that was not correlated to the market or bonds and had an opportunity to make money might make sense in just our typical models. So we added what I would consider to be a pure liquid alternative to the portfolio that maybe had a little more costs, but also some very low, very, very low or no correlation to other asset classes. We have been, because we are focusing on kind of higher net worth clients, and we're finding more of them, especially in the tax aware space, kind of kicking the tires on some alternatives. And then we use our custodians or case to like kind of have a pre-due diligence on some alternatives, but it's pretty one-off right now, and it's not going to be a big, huge focus of like, this is our marketing, but there are some clients that it feels like a fit to have some private equity investments or long, short, tax-aware strategies that I would consider alternatives.
You've mentioned your clients several times. I know you really care about your clients, and I think the listeners would be interested in who do you primarily work with? Do you have a niche? How closely do you stick with it? And also, we haven't talked very much about marketing, and marketing is a big part of niche marketing. What's your favorite marketing channel? And I know that's a lot of questions in one, but I know you can handle it too.
Oh my God, you want me to talk for another hour? Okay, our clients. I was fortunate to continue to work with 50 clients that I'd worked with at my former firm. And those people were tended to be either friends of mine or retirees. And so actually I think this is one of, in a world where everybody wants to niche and get a niche in day one, I know you and I both have a lot of experience, Cathy, and having worked with people across the spectrum, having clients who are part of the silent generation, I feel like that might give us a superpower in addition to just like, our years of experience. Because it's one thing to only want to work with people who are within 5 years of retirement and then say that you understand what's going to happen to them for the 20 years after retirement. But you and I both have worked with those people, just as part of our experience. And in my own case, some of my mentors started working with those clients. So I have financial plans that go back to the 80s or 90s that are in my files because it was a continuous kind of succession from my mentors to me working with them mid-career for myself. So we have a few kind of silent generation clients. They tend to be our wealthiest clients, and then also baby boomers. And then the clients that we are typically onboarding today, although we don't have, you must be this, tend to be Gen X and older millennial. And so those are our fastest growing segments of clients and fastest growing segments of assets. But I do feel good that we're not just focusing on them, because then we have the experiences to be, to have been around the block for some of the things that you don't see until you've experienced it yourself. And I also, if I can get into perhaps what I would consider to be a controversial area, especially because we're women, Cathy, I feel like there's first of all, in niche marketing, so many times people, pick like, hey, I wanted to work with doctors because, I know they make a lot of money, surgeons, whatever, business owners, etc. And those niches don't speak to the other person in the family. And I know you focus on working primarily with single women and your engagements are women. For me, many of the people that I work with are in a relationship. And if you have that niche focus, like, let's say the woman in the family is the business owner. Are you prepared to talk to her spouse? Or, if the male in the relationship is a surgeon, are you seeing the other person in the relationship if you're only focusing on, here's how surgeons operate and things like that? So we're very intentionally today pivoting toward working with families in the messy money middle, which is Gen X and older millennial families. Oftentimes, we're not exclusively working with people who are in a relationship, but we're working with breadwinners where their success is increasing, but also the complexity of their money issues is also increasing. And so it's more complicated. There's less time to get things done. And they need assistance with executing. It's not a binary world for them. And one of the things I've noticed, and you're embracing this, but I kind of push back against it, is that if you're a woman in our profession, the automatic assumption, especially if you're building a firm that happens to have primarily female employees, is like, oh my God, so awesome. I can't believe that you're, a firm that's working for women in financial planning. And I've played into that because my podcast is called Women's Money Wisdom, but I'm kind of sick of it because I feel like it pigeonholes you in a very quiet corner of our field where, the guys don't have to listen in and, you can have a big voice in a very small space. And so, so I'm pivoting and I want to talk about that messy money middle and very pointedly talk about how to cooperate and be, in many cases, men and women or women and women or men and men who are figuring out how to do this kind of stuff together, because I think we're ready for that complexity. And I think there's a huge need for people to be focusing on Gen X and older millennial. And people just aren't focusing on this space the way I want to focus on it.
So many things to say about what you just said. So I agree with you. Plus, you've built a firm and your background is ready for complexity. And I will take a guess that you like complexity.
I like sorting out complexity, but I like making things simple like that investment, conversation.
Well, yeah, but so you're turning chaos into something simple, right? That's so the longer I'm in the business, the more I enjoy the more complex situations. And I think that's because we have so much experience to offer from working with so many clients that it's fun to help people and know that you have the knowledge and really the experience to help them. I mean, I'm more than happy to take on a young couple who has some real complexity going on, even though I do have a niche. I admit it. And I've been very happy to do it that way. I also think something interesting about what you're saying, it kind of depends on your growth strategy. Like you said a couple of times, you're in growth mode. Well, for example, I'm not in high growth mode. So that totally switches your strategies about accumulating clients. How many do you want? What kind do you want? You could screen for different clients. So I think that some of the reason you're shifting may be because you are in a growth mode. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I do agree with that. I think I love growth. I love marketing. I didn't focus on that for much of my career, although I did work on the enterprise level on marketing for my former firm, even though I wasn't kind of in the center of it. But marketing is so fun for me, and I think I'd be less satisfied in work if I didn't have a pathway for growth. I know over the next year or two, I'm going to need to consider difficult choices of either growth of our team, more reliance on technology, adjustments in services, or limiting our ability to onboard new clients because we will have capacity issues in the near future.
That's a good problem to have,
Yeah. And I mean, good choices, right? Like I could be much more choosy in who I work with, or we could, consider different pathways. And I love that, kind of marketing side of things. We can talk about my favorite channels. And then I just, I kind of soft launched this messy money middle thing that I want to focus on, that I really, I bought the URL. I'm going to have a Substack. You can tell me how to have a Substack. But I really feel passionate about like this space needs a voice or voices. And I really over the past year or two have felt pigeonholed by only being a voice about women, which we need so much of, but I just feel like we're not getting the results we need by continuing, kind of to try the same pathways.
Okay, so I didn't realize that this was a serious endeavor. I love the name, number one. Your current podcast is called
Women's Money Wisdom.
So are you going to close that down?
TBD. I am not sure, but yeah, it's definitely under consideration. So the Women's Money Wisdom podcast, the very first episode was recorded in February of 2020. And we've been releasing episodes weekly ever since. In the early days, for the first 3 years, another financial planner who has since left our firm, Melissa Friedenberg, did a ton of the production as well as recorded more than half of the episodes. And she was instrumental in getting it launched. And then after she left our firm, I've been religiously posting episodes weekly. It's been so fun. It hasn't been a chore. It's been such an exceptional creative outlet. I paid for producers to, kind of get it onto the podcast platform, but I do all the, work of recording the episodes, ideas for episodes as well. And so I'm at this point in time where, the podcast gets listens, but it's not thousands or tens of thousands of listens. And so I'm not sure what I want to do with that. I love that we've been able to have an approachable, kind of focal point for personal financial literacy with women. And I've heard tremendous feedback because of that. But I also just, that organic growth ambition is like, do we need to refocus or pivot to something that, speaks to what I want to focus on as a firm. So I don't know, you give me your feedback. We'll have to have some hearts over wine about what I should do next. I've really thought about YouTube as being a really important disseminator of information for this next project. And so I'm not sure what I'll do with Women's Money Wisdom. I'm committed to it through the end of the year at least, though.
Well, good for you for doing it for so long. And I know you have so many great episodes.
Including episodes with you.
I know. One episode I did with you on my podcast is one of my most listened to. But what I wanted to say is I don't think there's any shame in ending something that's been successful and starting something new, especially if it's challenging to you. That will show up in your work. That'll show up in the podcast. And we could talk more offline about it. But I think it's exciting.
Well, we'll be chatting about it.
So, favorite marketing channel now, or anything new that you see going on in advisor marketing?
My most reliable marketing channel, if I were to say where I think I've kind of earned the most assets, is LinkedIn. I've always had a voice that I don't think was salesy, but was, had a point of view there. And a lot of people just roll their eyes or like, oh, another annoying message. But LinkedIn has always been great for me and feels like I know how to do that, if that makes sense. We've always had a newsletter once a month, and I know you do too. And that newsletter, I think, is, top of mind for clients to tell their friends and stuff like that. Yeah, and I'm really curious about YouTube. I do have a YouTube channel, so feel free to like and subscribe if you would like, just like the podcast.
What's the name?
YouTube is under Pearl Planning Financial. And, but, I don't think I'm doing it the way that gets the most looks, listens, kind of follows the algorithm. So I'm curious about that.
Which algorithm are you talking about now?
Well, just like, you can have YouTube shorts, or there's some really savvy financial planners who are posting, maybe 10 to 20 minute videos on very specific topics that relate to who they want to be working with. And, they look more perhaps like TikTok influencers, but they have relevant, compliant information to share. I don't think my long form podcasts go onto our YouTube channel, as well as I do quarterly webinars on investment and economic updates. I did a webinar on, the new One Big Beautiful Bill Act, those types of things. But I think, probably talking to producers who don't just work with financial planners and having a strategy that's a little bit different, looks a little bit different, a little bit more engaged with AI, whatever you call it. It's not SEO. But something close to that, those types of things.
Great. Okay. So now we've established that you're the chief visionary, probably the chief marketer. I bet you're a big rainmaker too. And so we're going to talk about work-life balance. Let's talk about the quote on your desk that you talk about on your website. You can do anything, but you can't do everything. And we all know that's true. I love that one. So how do you set boundaries up? And I know you have a family, if you don't mind my mentioning, you have a couple of kids. So tell us about that.
Well, probably my kids and husband would say that work gets a lot more attention than sometimes they'd like. I do think being an entrepreneur and a motivated individual in our profession is that's not looking to have a lifestyle practice where I brag about how many months off I take. Takes a lot of work, and starting a business takes a lot of work too. One of the things that changed was I used to commute a long way to work in my former life. And when I started this company, even though people said, hey, you should be in the bigger city that's, 15, 20 minutes away, I just rented a cheaper office in my hometown, and my office is 5 minutes from my house. That makes a huge difference because then I can pick up the kids from school and be back for a meeting at 4. So that's been really critical. Using the EOS process has also been critical. So I've been working really hard this year, but there are fewer nights where I just, am at the office until 10 or 11. Not that there aren't any of those nights. And I need those reminders. I need those boundaries. Having a team both increases some of my lift, but also increases the opportunity to delegate. Working with a financial planner as a partner on the clients that I work with, while I'm happy to carry the kind of the business development responsibility, but there's somebody else to do some of the legwork, is so, so important. And, everything's an evolution. I also really appreciate therapists. So I have an individual therapist and a couple of therapists that I go to, and that's been helpful too.
Good for you. I think for me, this business is, yes, it is very challenging, but it's also extremely satisfying and fun in a lot of ways, especially the people that you meet, our peers, that it can get all consuming, and it could be easy to make it higher in the priority system that family members and other loved ones may like. So I think for all of us, it's a challenge to keep those boundaries up. But it sounds like, for one, EOS that's a lot of what that's about. I mean, keeping you in a role that you're really good at and hiring people that are better at other things. That's one way to keep boundaries up in a very good way.
Yeah, absolutely. And that person can hold truth to power to myself and others. I'm looking forward to taking a vacation next week. And I think, in some years, Cathy, I might have been willing to record this podcast on my vacation, but I think I told you, no, I can't. I'm on vacation next week. So I am willing to check out during those times. It's not a month at a time. It's a week at a time. I really get renewal and recharge both on vacation with family as well as conferences with friends, because I've met so many amazing people like you who are just super cool. I wish you guys all lived closer, but it's great to see you, once or twice a year when we can get together in person.
Okay, so speaking of time management and boundaries, I think we're going to wrap up this podcast very soon and let you go. But before we do, I'm going to bring a question back to the broader industry. And this is called the 20% podcast, right? And the reason we called it that is because this 20% of women advisor thing seems to stick decade after decade. And there's a lot of really smart people, dedicated people trying to figure it out and change it. What changes do you think need to happen in our industry to bring more women in?
If guys create content, if men create content, content's for everyone. If women create content, content is for women. And if you look at the statistics, the analytics, where people are getting traction, I just think that's what's happening. And I do think it's kind of built into the system, unfortunately. And I am not a person, I think I know Cathy knows, but for listeners who I've never met before, I am very female forward, but I'm also not sky is falling or it's all stacked against us. But let me tell you something that's happening now. I just the other day was looking for a report on AI by a venture capitalist. I just couldn't remember her name, and I knew I'd heard it on a podcast. And so first I put into Perplexity, the kind of AI Google search platform. Hey, there's a woman who's a venture capitalist who wrote a very long report that's about AI, and it was published this year. Can you tell me what it is? the first 6 options were about women in AI, not a woman wrote a report about AI. And I was like, well, this is weird. And then I plugged in, hey, can you find some female authored reports on retirement research? Women in retirement. And so we're not just being pigeonholed because we pigeonholed ourselves. And I want sponsors, I want conversations. I want us to, build systems that don't have the patriarchy embedded in the code. And so I guess I'm committing to be less apologetic about bringing up these conversations. If I hear an episode on a podcast and it's like 50 great pieces of investment wisdom, and every single one of those pieces of wisdom is from a man, and then the cautionary tale is about a woman, I think I'm going to start saying something, because I heard a podcast episode like that last week from people that I really respect, and I love their podcast. And so I just want us to have some braver conversations about getting our foot in the door and keeping it in a room that doesn't pigeonhole us of, women's voices are for women and men's voices are for everyone.
Okay. I have one comment to make, because this topic really gets to me too. Do you think the men in the industry will listen to women in their content? I mean, and I'm talking about if it's not women-focused content, if it's general investment, economic content, like men do for men.
When men in our industry, maybe not. I think some of the pathways are to, co-host with a man, perhaps. But what's interesting is I have a podcast called Women's Money Wisdom, and you'd be surprised how often men who know me or don't are like, oh yeah, I listen to that. So I don't think the general population is necessarily like, oh, like, I don't think they make those assumptions. And I think there's so much inherently like, I just don't want to assume. I want to give everybody a chance to do better. But I want to do that by like raising up people that focus on women, but also people that focus on everyone that happen to be in the female voice.
Yes. Well, I'm here to support you with that 100%. And keep speaking out.
Yeah, you too. We'll speak together on that.
Okay, Melissa. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time, your wisdom, tips. And I know our listeners really appreciate it. I know I do. And thank you again. And I can't wait to see you in person.
See you soon.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're enjoying the show, leave us a 5-star review. It helps more women advisors discover the strategies and stories we share each week.
This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. This podcast does not engage in rendering legal, financial, or other professional services.